Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah with your host, Rabbi Anibal. Welcome, 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 welcome. Shelly, hi. Brenda is here, Jerome is here, David, Anastasia is here, and Ashira is here. She's in my office. She loves to be on camera so much that I had to drag her out of the frame and ask her, please, to stay on her seat. She hates being in front of the camera. But she's here, and I can't show you because my camera is pretty fancy and it's in a fixed position. So now I guess I need multiple cameras. No, I don't. I don't. Okay. So welcome everyone again, Trollheim. If you haven't said hi in the chat, please say hi. We always like to know who is on the other side. And we are going to start shortly. This is the time when everybody start connecting. We are going to study today Parshat Acharei Mot and Kedoshim. And it's interesting because it contains one of the most famous verses of the entire Torah. This is where we are going to learn love your neighbor as yourself. And also it contains, oh, Shelly, you have your espresso. I have mine. I have my latte. Uh, so love your neighbor as yourself. Also, it has the commandment of loving the ger, which is the convert. That's the way we translate it, even though back in the day we didn't really have the concept of convert to Judaism the way we have it today. It was something more organic and something that just happened by assimilation, that you will move to Israel. And maybe we explored a little bit of that last year. That's why I didn't want to do it again this time. But maybe next year we can revisit that topic whenever we study Acharei Mot and Kedoshim, which, by the way, most of the time they are combined. There are two different parshiot, two different Torah portions. One is Acharei Mot, the other one is Kedoshim. Acharei Mot means after the death, and it's talking what happened after the death of the sons of Aaron. I don't know if you remember when the tabernacle was inaugurated, they presented an offering that it wasn't necessarily kosher. We don't know what happened there. And they died. And then the second parsha is called Kedoshim. Kedoshim comes from the word kadosh, same word that we use every Friday night when we do kiddush, right? With a wine. Kadosh means holy, or kiddush means sanctification. And so, but these two parshiot, Acharei Mot and Kedoshim, they're usually together. They're kind of short, each one of them. And when the Jewish year is a little shorter, we need to combine some of the Torah portions. I don't know if you're aware the way the calendar works. We have 54 Torah portions in total. So if you ever wonder how many parshiot we have in the Torah, 54, because it's the maximum number of Shabbatot that we can have in a Jewish year. And that is for leap years, when we have 13 months. And it happens every 2 or 3 years. But whenever we have 12 months, then we have at least 4 less Shabbatot. And then there are certain Torah portions that they have to be combined, so we can still read the 54 every year before Simchat Torah. That's the way it works. So this year is a shorter year. That's why Acharei Mot and Kedoshim, and then Be'ar and Bechukotai, and so forth, are going to be combined. Okay? But again, this year I wanted to spend pretty much all at least most of the class talking about the love your neighbor as yourself, because there are many things that evolve of, I would say, our understanding of that verse, and there are many things that perhaps we misunderstand. Especially the rabbis talk about the limitations of this verse and some implications that we have when we try to analyze every word of that verse. We get into some territory that create a lot of confusion, so hopefully we are going to bring light into that as well. Okay? Okay, with that said, it's already 12:10. Let's begin with the class. I will bring for all of you the first slide. You have it there? You know. Oh, you have it in your phone. Okay. Your phone. Okay. So, let's begin. This is the verse that we always quote. Okay? It says, uh, you shall not take vengeance, not bear any grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Hashem, I am your God. In Hebrew it says, Ani Adonai. That's when we use one of the names of God. Now, you see, it's not just love your neighbor as yourself. We always quote that part, which is very unusual because in Judaism, we know that we should not take like half of the verse. And yet that's what we do, right? We never mention you shall not take vengeance, not bear any grudge against the son of your people. That part usually is, it doesn't make it to the poster. Only the second half. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Hashem. For many people, if you ask them what is the most important verse of the Torah, this is the one they're going to quote. In general, I don't know if you've ever been in the sanctuary of Congregation Sharet Tzedek. If you haven't, I invite you to come to visit us and to experience one of our services. You will see that we have two tables on top of the beam, on top of the stage. And the two tables have two inscriptions in Hebrew representing the two most famous verses of the Torah containing the word love. One is this one. There is Ve'avta lereacha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Ve'avta comes from the word ahava, love. And the other one that we have is Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha, which is part of the Shema Israel, which said, and you shall love Adonai your God. So one table will say Ve'avta lereacha kamocha, love your neighbor, and the other one will say Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha, and you shall love your God. So it's very interesting, and I think I love that because it encapsulate two things that they are, I would say, equally important. You can't just focus on yourself and loving yourself, or just God and neglect yourself, and vice versa. So that's why we decided to do that. Brenda, you had Kedoshim as your bat mitzvah parsha. Did you have to write a Dvar Torah, a speech, or something? I would like to know if you remember what you said for your bat mitzvah. I remember when I had my bar mitzvah in Argentina, we did not have to write a Dvar Torah. I don't know why. And then when I moved to Chile, also the people didn't have to write, the students didn't have to write the Dvar Torah. It was just a small blurb. It was one paragraph of what the parsha meant to them, and that will be published on the, how you call it? The thing that we give to people at the entrance. The pamphlet that you get at the entrance. It will be the photo of the bar mitzvah, a little bit of the description, the name, hobbies, interests, and things. And then this parsha meant this to me. And then when I came here, I realized that the Divrei Torah were a big deal for bar mitzvahs. But so, but it's a good thing. So if you wrote something, Brenda, and if you remember, Brenda, you had, let me highlight this. It was a group adult celebration. Someone else had that honor. Wow. Okay, if you ever want to write the Dvar Torah for Kedoshim, let me know in advance. Okay, so this is the verse that we are going to talk about. The first thing we have to know, and as I mentioned, the first part of the verse, nobody talks about it. Okay, so I wanted to discuss with you a little bit what it means to take vengeance and what it means to bear a grudge. Okay, and the rabbis explain it like this in the Talmud, and then Rashi will explain a little bit about what the Talmud is saying. Now, what constitutes taking vengeance? Listen to this. For example, he says to him, lend me your sickle. And the latter replies, nope. The next day, the latter say to him, lend me your axe. And you say to him, I will not lend it to you, just as you did not lend to me the sickle, right? But that is revenge. You do something to somebody else based on what that other person did to you. Okay, there is an action here, and that is the problem, the action that you do. And then the Talmud continues. What constitutes bearing a grudge? Well, listen to this. For example, he says to him, "Let me your axe." The latter replies, "Nope." Then the next day, the latter says to him, "Lend me your sickle." Now, if he says to him, "Here it is for you, I am not like you, who did not lend it me." This constitutes bearing a grudge, for he keeps the hatred in his heart, even though he does not take revenge. So here we have two different things that we have to learn to distinguish, but in the eyes of the rabbis, they are pretty much the same. One involves an action. You don't do something because of the feeling that you have. And the other one, there is no action, but the feeling is still there. And it's also bad. Now, the thing is, it's not that you cannot have the feelings. The problems here are the words that you say to the other person. So the action is there, but it's accompanied by hurtful words. So, and we talk about this many times in past classes, about the power of the words within Judaism and how the words we use could be as powerful as our actions. So that's why the rabbis put these two on the same sentence. So, and you see, everything is motivated by a feeling. But again, let me repeat this. The feeling itself is not a sin, it's not bad, it's something that you cannot control. You can't control what pops up in your mind. We don't work like that. We are not wired like that. We feel anxiety. We feel fear. We feel hatred sometimes. We feel so many things. But what it's saying is, as far as we don't act on it and we don't speak because of it, then what happens is, most of the time, these feelings will come and go. So we just have to be sure and we have to be careful what we do once we get those feelings. So for sure, don't say anything and don't do anything. Okay? So again, that is what at least the rabbis understand for vengeance and bearing a grudge. And then I guess the verse could have finished there. Right? But it does not. Then it's continue. Instead, love your neighbor as yourself. And I believe that is that's the second part of the verse is the antidote, so we won't get stuck on that feeling of hatred. So instead of doing something negative every time we have the feelings, we do something positive about that to try to overcome that negative feeling. Okay? Any questions or any comment on the chat? Because this is something that is very important in every religion. I will say every religion will have in one way or another some kind of advice on how to deal with love and hatred of other people. So if you have any comment, please let me know in the chat. And if you are watching the class and you haven't said hello, please say hello in the chat. Brenda, you said, what happened with those? What happened to those that don't live themselves? That would be a dilemma. I don't love themselves, but don't love themselves. Yeah, well, that is a very good point. Because again, going back to the verse, if it says love your neighbor as you love yourself, it implies that you cannot love your neighbor if you don't love yourself first. Right? And again, this is something that we also explored in this class before when we say, for example, about saving a life. We always say that your life comes first. It's called Hayacha Kotmim. We have the responsibility to preserve other lives, but not at the expense of yours. So everything starts from you, and then you can continue to other, because it's like everything in life. You cannot give what you don't have. And I'm not talking about love. I'm talking about everything. Everything. If you can, you cannot give money to another person if you don't have the money first, right? Or you cannot give your time to other people if you don't have the time first. You need to have something in order to be able to give something. Edward Tunick, welcome to the class. Uh, oh, is it Cheryl? Cheryl from Michigan. Welcome, Cheryl. Welcome to the class at Torah L'Chaim. So yeah, you can, I believe that this is something we should all put in a frame. You cannot give what you don't have. So if you want to give love, you have to develop love within yourself first, and then you will have love to give to others. So going back to the love your neighbor as yourself, and this comes at not surprise, that Rabbi Akiva said, this is a fundamental principle of the Torah. In other words, this is the most important thing on the Torah. And there are even songs about this. I don't know if you ever heard Amar Rabbi Akiva. Did you hear that one? I will put a little bit of echo so it sounds better. Amar Rabbi Akiva ואהבת לרעך, לרעך כמוך, ואהבת לרעך, לרעך כמוך. And then the song goes, זה כלל גדול גדול בתורה, זה כלל גדול בתורה. This is a fundamental principle of the Torah. So that's a song based on this statement from Sifra. Sifra, by the way, is a book of Midrash, and this is where it's coming from. Brenda, you missed a concert. Unfortunately, the only time that I do concerts in this day and age is at the seniors' home here in Winnipeg, once a month. But we are not streaming those. So, Shelley, you said, let's see what you said, Shelley, that saving one's own life come under the heading of suicide. What do you mean? Does saving one's own life come under the heading of suicide? I don't get it, Shelley. If you can rephrase it, I will love to answer that question. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue. Now, another time that we learn about this phrase, love your neighbor as yourself, saving your own life is not committing suicide. Oh, you mean the prohibition of suicide? Let's see if you are talking about that. If the prohibition comes from this, I would like to know if that's what you're asking. So, the other time that another famous story involving the love your neighbor as yourself, sort of, is this. Listen to this. It's a story also from the Babylonian Talmud, and it goes like this. There is a story about a Gentile who came before Shammai. Shammai was a famous rabbi. This is even, at the time of the writing of the Mishnah. I think even before the times of the Mishnah, Shammai. He was because the rabbis from the time of the Mishnah were Tanaim. He was one of the Zugot, the time that were only two rabbis in charge of everything. And it was Hillel and Shammai. So there is a story about the Gentile who came before Shammai and said to him, I will convert to Judaism if you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. Have you ever heard this one? It's a very famous one. Shammai pushed him away with the measuring stick that was in his hand. So in other words, Shammai said, are you nuts? I've been studying all my life to understand just a little bit of Judaism, and you want me to teach you the entire Judaism while you stand on one foot? It means that you don't have too much time, right? That's the implication of that. So get out of my house, okay? So the Gentile then went to Hillel, who helped him to convert. Hillel told him, whatever is hateful to you, do not do to your friend. This is the entire Torah. The rest is its explanation. Now go and study. So, in other words, it's interesting, and we are going to talk about it in a minute, that Hillel changed the wording of the verse. Instead of doing it in the positive, love your neighbor, he put it on the negative. Whatever is hateful to you, do not do to your friend. It's almost like matching the other two statements, because don't take revenge, don't bear a grudge, don't hate, right? Makes sense to explain it in this way. But he'll imply that is the core of the Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if that's the core of the Torah, you may ask, why do we need the rest of the Torah? Well, the rest of the Torah is to ensure that we can achieve that, because it's not that easy to love your neighbor as yourself. So the next of the Torah will prepare you for that, but only if you study. So Hillel brightly said to this person who wanted to convert to Judaism, I already told you, okay, the entire Torah, but now you have to go and fulfill your part of the bargain. You're going to convert to Judaism, and you're going to spend the rest of your life studying the explanations. And that's come from the story. So, Shelley, I understand, not committing suicide, loving your life. It goes beyond that. There is always it comes from a different theological background. The not committing suicide, that is not specifically from love yourself. Okay, that is coming from a different place. So, very famous story. Now, of course, when you read this story, different rabbis will try to explain what was going on in that conversation. So listen to this. It seems that the Gentile was a righteous convert and was not acting in a sarcastic manner, jokingly suggesting that he be taught the entire Torah while literally standing on one foot. Rather, he must have requested a method by which he could base all of the Torah's commandments upon one unifying principle: one foot, in order to avoid the lack of clarity that converts customary experience, since they do not learn about mitzvot from their youth, mitzvot commandments from their youth. Therefore, Hillel gave him a brief form of this all-encompassing principle with which he will be able to remember all the mitzvot. In other words, what happened here, when you start studying Torah, I don't know if it ever happened to you, it is important to have one, I would say, empowering principle that they will help you or guide you in how to apply the Torah. And this is something that, for example, different companies will do when they try to empower their employees to operate a little bit more independently, not depending on asking your boss all the time what to do, or going to the manual all the time to trying to figure out what to do. If you can understand the mission statement of a company, right, then you can make decisions on the spot based on, okay, is this decision that I'm about to make, does it match the mission statement of the company? And that helps a lot. It will empower employees to make quick decisions by themselves, not depending so much on a superior for that. Brenda, you said, I found that interesting that this is the middle of the Torah rather at the beginning, especially with Hillel's explanation. Yeah, it's interesting that it's coming also in the book of Leviticus, right? I would expect this in the book of Exodus or around the Ten Commandments or something like that. No, it's in the book of Leviticus that is mostly dealing with sacrifices and stuff like that. And yet we have this verse here. But I believe it is important. This is what this rabbis and Rabbi Shlomo Ephraim Ben Aaron Luchitz, what he's saying is that love your neighbor as yourself is almost like the mission statement of Judaism, and that is something that will empower you to make decisions when you need to know how to apply a mitzvah specifically. When you do something because it's commanded by God, you always have to ask yourself, am I harming somebody else by fulfilling this mitzvah, right or not? As somebody taught me once, I was talking in a class and back at the seminary about prayer and talking about what is a prayer with kavanah, what is a good prayer, and how do we pray. And the rabbi taught us at the time that the best prayer is when at the end of the Amidah, that we take 3 steps to the back at the end of the Amidah. We have 3 steps to the back and then one side and the other side, right? Remember that part? He was saying at the end of the Amidah, when you take the 3 steps to the back, the first thing you do is to look behind your back to be sure you are not stepping into anybody's toes. You understand what he's trying to say here? It doesn't really matter how much kavanah you have. If, for you to have that beautiful prayer experience comes at a cost that you're stepping into somebody's toes because you cannot check what is around you, that is not real prayer. So that is, again, prayer is very important, but you have to put it together with do not do to somebody else what you don't want some people to do to you, or love your neighbor as yourself, which I guess Hillel thought that just saying love your neighbor as yourself will be more difficult to understand, so he tried to make it easier for the convert to understand that principle, and that's why he mentioned it that way. So, listen to this. This is, and you know how much I love this. I bring it all the time. The Sefer HaChinuch. This is a book that includes all the 613 commandments of Judaism. So if you ever want to have a summary of each one of the commandments and, you don't have time to go through the entire Talmud, that is the way to go. It's a beautiful book that summarizes all the commandments. So, listen to this, what Sefer HaChinuch will say about this specific mitzvah, because love your neighbor as yourself, it is a specific mitzvah, specific commandment. So, the Sefer HaChinuch will say, the elements included in this mitzvah follow the general principle that one should treat another person in the way that he will treat himself. For example, protecting his property, preventing him from being harmed, speaking only well of him, respecting him, and certainly not glorifying oneself at his expense. The sages have said regarding this last point, one who glorifies himself at the expense of his fellow has no share in the world to come, whereas one who behaves with others in a loving and peaceful manner fulfills the verse, Israel by whom I am glorified. In the Sifri, remember I read this one for you, the one who was saying the phrase of Rabbi Akiva. In the Sifri, it is stated that Rabbi Akiva said this is a fundamental principle in the Torah, meaning that many commandments are related to this one. Again, the concept of mission statement. In the respect that one who loves his fellow will not steal his belongings, not be unfaithful to his wife, nor will he defraud or insult him, not trespass upon his property, nor cause him damage in any way. Thus, the fulfillment of many other commandments is dependent upon the fulfillment of this one. Let's see. I have many comments here. Oh, we have a new pope. American Pope.
First one in Catholic Church's history.
Okay, first one in Catholic history. Hooray for the new Pope. Habemus Papum. That's what I say, Habemus Papum? American. Very good. I will read that about that after the class. But let's see the comments here. You bought one for David? Oh, cool. Jerome said, it is in Bereshit Cain and Abel, an example of doing something hateful to yourself, to another. What do you mean? Can able example of doing something hateful to yourself and to another? Jerome, come on, you have to explain me that one. And yeah, now let's see. Let's continue because there is something that I wanted to share with you. Now there is another book containing all the mitzvot. Remember, Sefer HaChinuch is not the only one. You have Sefer HaChinuch, Sefer HaMitzvot, Mishneh Torah. You have Sefer Mitzvot HaGadol. There are multiple attempts to summarize all the 613 commandments. So this is another one, Sefer Mitzvot HaGadol. And this is from France, in the year 1247. So it goes like this. Imagine a person sitting and cutting a piece of meat, okay, who accidentally cuts his own hand with the knife. Would it be logical for him to hit the hands with his whole, which is holding the knife in revenge? Nevertheless, this analogy only applies to a person who is your comrade in scholarship and deeds. However, regarding an evil person who does not accept rebuke, it is a mitzvah to hate that person. Why do I want to bring this to you? Because there is a big controversy about how to understand the verse in Hebrew. The verse is, love your neighbor as yourself. Neighbor or fellow in Hebrew is reacha. Ve'avta lereacha kamocha. And it's not clear what the word reacha really means. Is it friend? Is it somebody from your people? Is it a Jewish person? Is it not a Jewish person? Is your literal neighbor from next door? What is it? So we are going to see that there are different interpretations of this word because depends on how you translate this word. It will be a different extent for this verse. In fact, I heard many interpretations today. Many rabbis, they try to explain that Ve'avta lereacha kamocha means to Jewish people only. But some others, like the Sefer Mitzvot HaGadol, it goes even further than that. That it will say this applies only to people that is like you, that is at your level. Okay? And even further than from there, that it says, if you have in front of you a person that is evil, and you try to rebuke a person, you try to make them understand that what they're doing is wrong. If the person doesn't want to change, it is a mitzvah to hate that person. Now, what does it mean to hate that person? I'm not even going to go there. To what extent we are allowed to hate? Is it just a feeling that you have? Is the way you talk to the other person? Is the way you're allowed to behave towards the other person? Is very interesting. But the way you're going to treat the other person, it depends a lot on how you translate the word reacha. Okay? In modern day and age, I want to tell you right away, reacha, we accept the translation as fellow or neighbor, and it includes Jews and non-Jews. But it wasn't necessary always like that, because comments like this, right, for evil person, non-Jews were most of the time in history, non-Jews were the one who were the evil or doing evil things against Jews. So it's basically said you're not obligated to love such people, the people that are trying to destroy you. Right? And you try to build bridges, you try to establish a relationship with them, and that failed again and again and again. So those people, then it's a mitzvah to hate them. You don't have to love them because there is nothing else for you to do. But even here, with this extreme interpretation of Sefer Mitzvot HaGadol, it implies that there was an attempt first to fix that relationship. It said, an evil person who does not accept rebuke. It means that there was an approach first. but nothing happened and the situation didn't change. Any comments? Please let me know in the chat. Let's continue now. Now, there is another book that talking about the commandments, Sefer Yereim, and this is also from France, from Metz, and it goes like this. Listen to this. The Holy One, blessed is He, says, means you do, love means you do not do or say someone else something that you know is hurtful to him. Okay? It's interesting because what is love after all? Is love a feeling? Is love action? I'm looking at my wife here.
Yes and yes.
So, and we don't talk nearly as much about this because what it says, for example, love your God. What does it mean, love your God? Is it a feeling or is what you do for God? Right? I'm not sure if it's a feeling in the Torah when the Torah says love. I'm not sure if it's a feeling. I think love in the Torah is a set of expected actions. And when we are coherent with that set of actions, that is called love. Okay? So love your neighbor doesn't mean that you have those feelings in your heart. Love your neighbor means that you behave in a certain way towards your neighbor, or you speak in a certain way. Same with God. Love your God means that you behave in a certain way and you do certain things. And it's interesting because, and this is something I would just say it and leave it there. I don't want to go too deep into that because there is no such a commandment of love your parents. Aha. Right? It says honor your parents, not love your parents.
Okay, so that's true because you can't command an emotion, right?
But so my point is, so is it an emotion or is not an emotion? Right? Unless that it is something that that is related to action, that there is certain situations where you wouldn't be able to do certain things for your parents, but you still owe them honor because they are your creators. That's why I said I want to say it and I will leave it there. Okay, let's move on because we can get stuck there until the end of the day otherwise. So let's continue with this. The Holy One, blessed be He, says, love means you do not do or say to someone else something that you know is hurtful to him. Do not ask, how do I know what bothers him? Am I a prophet? That is why the verse includes the word as you love yourself, right? Learn from yourself that which you know in your heart. This is what Hillel meant when he said, whatever is hurtful to you, do not do unto your friends. This is the whole Torah, and the rest is commentary. So now we have, for the first time, for all this text that I share with you, a text that is putting the two things together. The way it's written in the Torah and the way Hillel is interpreting that verse. So we can learn from there. And it's interesting because it recognizes the way we judge things around. We judge everything based on our own experience. And it's true. It's a fair question. How do I know what would bother another person? Well, you don't. You can't unless you ask. But in general, you always start with your own experience. You could be way off sometimes. You could be way off. But we have no other way unless you have more information, which usually we don't. We start from whatever we understand about the situation. Okay? And yes, you can make mistakes, but that's the way it is. Shelley, you say, let's see here, the action, which is external, must come from internal heart and mind. Sometimes, and that is the best possible situation, right? When there is coherence between feelings and action. But it not always happens like that. if sometimes you will have to do things that you don't feel like doing, and there is something that you can see in the modern days that people don't like to do. People don't like to do things that they don't feel like doing. But it's not what the Torah says. The Torah is saying here is sometimes you will have things that you will have to do or say, even if you don't feel like. Right? Like doing dishes and taking out the garbage, even if I don't feel like, and if I don't do it, well, the voice of God will tell me right away.
Through his vessel.
The voice of God, most of the time, sounds pretty similar to my wife's voice. I don't know why. It might be just me. Yeah, but we have to learn sometimes to do things that we don't want to do because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Now, I want to go back to what we said before, glorifying ourselves, at the expense of somebody else. Rabbi Yosef ben Hanina said, "One who glorifies himself through the denigration of his fellow has no share in the world to come." So, you see, we start learning about now consequences of not fulfilling this mitzvah. So with and this is something that I don't quote too often, the Jerusalem Talmud. We usually study about the Babylonian Talmud. But here you have a little gem from the Jerusalem Talmud, which say that the consequence of not observing the mitzvah of loving your neighbor as yourself is that you won't have a share in the world to come. So it's compromising your afterlife. Yeah. Ah, Leon Pinkovich is here. Welcome, Leon. Are you at home or you're here in the building? I don't know. I didn't see you today, so that's what I'm asking. But welcome to the class. And so, yeah, we have here for the first time the consequence of not obeying or fulfilling the commandment of love your neighbor as yourself. So we have to be very careful about fulfilling that commandment. And my wife was laughing, both in person and in the chat. Anyway, now the Rambam, and I was eager to share this with you because I always appreciate what the Rambam teaches about the commandments. Because remember, Maimonides, the Rambam, was a rationalist, and he always was trying to find the rationale behind all the commandments. That's why he wrote the Mishneh Torah sometimes, not only for us to know what to do, but why we do it. Something that before the Rambam wasn't so important. The why we do things is not so important. What do you mean why we do it? We do it because God said that we have to do it, but for the Rambam, that thing that we do it because God says that we have to do it was not enough. He always thought that there was the big wisdom within the mitzvot, and the more we understand the mitzvot, the more we learn why God gave us the mitzvot. Because let's be honest, God doesn't need the commandments. We need the commandments, and God knows us so well that gave us all these mitzvot to make us better. So that's why I wanted to share this text from the Rambam, the Maimonides, who said, "It is a mitzvah incumbent upon every person to love people as much as he loves himself. As the verse states, and you shall love your fellow as you love yourself. Therefore, one must speak praise of another person and be cautious with another's property in the same way that he desires to be honored and is cautious with his own property. However, one who glorifies himself through the denigration of his fellow has no share in the world to come." So again, the Rambam will agree that we have to be careful in the way we fulfill the commandments because we are compromising our afterlife with this. It's in the sense that you can fulfill all the 613 commandments, but if you don't do it with loving your neighbor in mind, or in other words, if you don't fulfill your commandment with some kind of awareness on how that affects other people around you, then you're not really fulfilling the commandments. You're going through the motions, but that's not the right way to do it. So, that's what I wanted to share with you with Maimonides with Shelley Church. And said ego. Yeah, well, ego is the root of many of the, I would say, all of the problems that we have. All of the problems. That is something that we understand or we study about it at a deeper level during Passover when we eat the matzah and we take the chametz out of your homes. The chametz symbolizing ego, right? Because the chametz, the yeast, is what make the dough inflate, but it's just the chametz. What it does is to create a chemical reaction that it will add air to the dough. It's just air. It's nothing. We see the bread that is so nice and big, but it's just air. It's just air. And it's not a coincidence, I will say, that sometimes arrogant people, we tell them that they have the how you say, the head full of air. It's the same. It's the same thing. You can say that, if you see an arrogance, you can say that they had the head full of chametz, which is the same. But yeah, the ego is the beginning, unfortunately. So we were in the Jerusalem Talmud. Let's go back to the Babylonian Talmud, and I wanted to address a little bit. We don't have much time, but I wanted to address a little bit the concept of when it is permitted to hate somebody else in the same way that we are commanded to love our fellow. Okay, listen to this. I thought it was very interesting. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak said in the name of Rav, it is permitted to hate someone in whom you have detected immorality. Okay, he's setting the parameters here. When hating somebody is fine. If you know somebody that is an immoral person, then it doesn't qualify as a fellow for you to love them. As the Torah states, if you see your enemy's donkey struggling under its burden, lest you think that the word enemy refers to a non-Jew, we have received a teaching that it refers to a Jew who is your enemy. So don't say, the enemy is the non-Jew. This thing could be applied only to Jewish people as well. Okay? Because it said, but it is permitted to hate a fellow Jew. It's a question. Is it permitted to hate a fellow Jew? For we know that the Torah says you should not hate your brother in your heart. Rather, the verse must be speaking about someone who you alone so do an immoral act. And it is the Jew that you are permitted to hate. So we should never hate anybody. But if you know somebody who is an immoral person, you don't have to love that person. And I feel here that what the Torah is saying, that when you cannot love a person, that's what is called hating the person. That lack of love. Okay? And it says that according to the Babylonian Talmud, there are certain situations, and they're the exceptions, where you don't have to love the other person. And you don't have to, if you don't love it, basically you are technically hating them. Technically hating them. There is not such a thing of being neutral. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. At least when we come to the feelings that we feel here. Yeah, Brenda, I said you're opening a can of worm. I hear you. But it's you can understand why the rabbis ask the same questions that we ask in this generation, right? Does this love your neighbor as yourself? Does it apply to everybody? Or there are exceptions to this? And this is something that we all have to address. And it's a reality. And hating somebody could have many different repercussions. Could mean, for example, that you have all the right to avoid somebody that is toxic, right? Not loving a person doesn't mean that you have to hate them and harm them. That's not the point here. But it will qualify for somebody that you have to avoid at all cost. When you love a person, you don't avoid the person. Shelley said you could make one judge and jury. Well, but that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, what the Babylonian Talmud saying here, this is something that is limited to your own personal relationship with a singular individual, not towards a group of people, but towards an individual that you have a problem because you know that is an immoral person. And there is something to you, and there is something that is harmful for you to be around that person, right? You can avoid the person. It is okay. It is okay to do that because remember that your life comes always first. Hayecha kotmim. Your life comes first. Hello, Amparo. Welcome to the class. Yeah, so that's what is very, very important. So, and going back to Sefer Yereim, it goes, Jews are commanded to love one another in a generous way. Lest we think that this applies to everyone, the verse includes the word fellow, meaning someone who, like you, has accepted the responsibility for the commandments and love mitzvot as you do. So another moral person, right? However, if somebody is a sinner who are not commanded to love him, we are not commanded to love him. Rather, we are commanded to hate him. As the verse states, reverence for God is the hatred of evil. And as another verse states, shall I not hate the one who hates you, God? So, in other words, we have to love everybody, but not really everybody. We know that there are cases that, and I'm glad that the Torah gives us a way out because we all know, and I don't know the situation of each one of you, but you probably all have an example of somebody who said, "How can I love this person? Such a piece of I don't want to say it. I will say it right there, but you know what I'm talking about, right?" But the Torah said, "No, you don't. There are limits. There are limits to this commandment." And I'm glad that there are limits to this commandment. It is important to understand that, okay? But it's personal. You can generalize, and it's case by case. That's what the rabbi said. It's case by case. Things that you experience that it will make a person unqualified to receive your love, okay? Love not as a feeling, but as an action and words, if you know what I mean. Let's see if I can have one more here. I think I want to close with the Lubavitch comments. It said, regarding that which is stated in the Talmud, there is a mitzvah to hate someone who sins. This refers to someone who is your equal in learning and deed, and whom you have properly rebuked. But if he does not fit this description, Hillel the elder had taught us, be like the disciples of Aaron, loving peace, pursuing peace, loving God's creatures, and drawing them close to Torah. Those who are far from God's Torah must be drawn close with strong bonds of love. Thus the mitzvot to love and hate coexist. This is a mitzvah to hate the evil that exists within a person while loving the hidden spark of godliness that resides with him. So Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi makes it even more difficult to hate someone. Because I said, yeah, he's talking about his equals, his other scholars, right? And when they show evil paths, the scholars. But so for regular people, he will love everyone. Because even if they don't behave the way they should, they do it out of ignorance. And that love, we should never love because we still have a chance to bring them close to Torah. So, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming to Trollheim this week. And remember, if you missed any part of the class, it's going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. And so you can catch it again if you want. And I hope to see you all next week. It's interesting because next week we are going to have the concert, but it's not going to be broadcasted. So again, if you're in Winnipeg, please try to come to the Peace and Hope concert that we are putting together next Tuesday. And if you are not in Winnipeg, I will do my best to record it, and like last time to put a few clips on YouTube, so at least you can have a little bit of a experience of this wonderful concert that we are going to have next Tuesday. So again, if you're in Winnipeg, please visit our website, register yourself, come to enjoy some great music. We are doing this concert in between Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim to have songs of hope, of peace, of Israel, and it's going to be an amazing experience. If you can make it, please be there. If you can make it, just wait to see some of the clips that I'm gonna post after the fact. So I hope to see you all next week. Stay safe, be blessed, and hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.